Now, Eskom plans to study yesterday's court ruling ordering Gupta-linked advisory firm Trillion Capital Partners to pay it back nearly 600 million. The power utility will then decide how to enforce the judgment. The Pretoria High Court ruled that Eskom's payments to Trillion were unlawful and invalid. Eskom took legal action in 2018 to set aside payments it made to Trillion and global consultancy McKinsey. McKinsey apologized and has since paid back over 900 million rand to Eskom. Energy expert Ted Bloom says that Eskom could use the money from Trillion to bring down the price of electricity.
I'm a bit disappointed in the pace of recovery. You know, this information has been available for more than 3-4 years now. And I've personally handed a dossier to the SIU, which will sort out 10 billion rands of Eskom's problems. And they've just been sleeping on it. It's been more than a year, a worked out dossier, ready for the court roll, and they've just been sleeping on it. So it seems to me that some people are keen to make some moves, and other people are keen to just sleep on things and not do any moves.
Yeah.
And so that means selective sort of prosecution, and that's not good news. What we need is comprehensive prosecution and pursuit of all the monies that are due to the public and to Eskom. Because as soon as Eskom gets the money, it will reduce the burden on the public. If you recover all the money due to Eskom, you can more than halve the price of electricity to you and me.
So let's just talk to that figure again. By your calculations, if I'm not correct, and please correct me if I am wrong, you say that in fact it's 1.4 trillion that Eskom is owed.
Eskom has squandered or spent or stolen 1.4 trillion rand excess from the public over and above what was entitled to get.
Wow. I mean, that is money that I don't think any of us know how many zeros are in that. Perhaps a coincidence that the company's name of the consultant.
It's about a third of the GDP of the country.
You've also asked for a full forensic audit of Eskom. What is your basis on this, on your query?
Well, the Eskom debt stands at about 500 billion if you follow Eskom's numbers. If you scrub the debt and you take out the irregular expenditure that's been funded via debt and the stealing that's been funded via debt, you can probably clean up about 300 billion of the 500 billion. And the only way to justify that is to do it through a forensic audit. Let me give you some quick numbers, very quick numbers. You can scrub 100 billion of fraud money out of Medupi. It's overpriced by more than 100 billion. Ditto for Kusile, another 100 billion. That's off the top, that's 200 billion. Ngula is 30 billion, which is overcharged compared to what the quote was. So that's 230 billion. On the coal account, it's 40 billion a year. You know, on the RE, it's 50 billion rand this year and growing. So if you add those numbers up, those are the numbers that have been funded by debt. If you take that out of the debt, Eskom sits with a debt of about 150 billion. And that's affordable. Eskom can pay 100 billion rands worth of debt, but it can't pay 500 billion rands worth of debt. And that's why they keep on pushing the tariffs up to try and pay the debt. If you just kill the debt to where it should be, we can actually halve the tariffs of electricity. And I think the public needs to demand that to happen.
Well, to take that story further, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he will announce more measures to support Eskom. President Ramaphosa met with the troubled Power Utility Board yesterday. The board reportedly presented a report on the implementation of the utility's turnaround plan that includes cutting costs, driving efficiencies and increasing revenue through, among other factors, higher collection rates. For analysis on the meeting and the market's reaction to the meeting, we're now joined via Skype by economist Iraj Abedian. Mr. Abedian, a very good morning to you. The meeting yesterday to align government's operations in fixing Eskom, they've brought together finance, public enterprises and energy and minerals. Your thoughts about this way of dealing with it?
I think it's about time that the president brings all these finance, public enterprise and energy policy to sort out the problem of Eskom, and more importantly, to sort out the problem of the country's energy policy. As your clip showed, Eskom is in deep trouble, and its troubles are not just financial. It's got to do with organizational. It's got to do with the skills level. It's got to do with the fact that the organization knows who are the people who have stolen from it, but is doing nothing about them. And there got to be a very vigorous and consistent policy to recover the undue debt that has been put on the books of Eskom, because Eskom is the biggest risk to the South African economy. So it's good that the President, but I sincerely hope that it's not about giving Eskom more money. It's put more water into a broken bucket. It will just disappear. So I think Eskom needs to be restructured. Energy in the country has to be restructured. And within that, Eskom has to be repositioned to play its due role, which has got an important role to play, but not in getting more fiscal resources and squandering it.
You're talking about the recovery of money. How far will the judgment yesterday ordering Trillion to pay back about 600 million rands go? How far will it go to solving that problem?
I think it is a good small start. Even the judgment talks about Trillion giving back what it has stolen from Eskom, or McKinsey has already up roughly $1 billion of what it has stolen. But that's not the full damage that Trillion and McKinsey have caused in Eskom. Getting back what has been stolen is step one. Step two is the damage that they have caused. And the judgment is pretty silent on it. And Eskom, and I believe National Treasury, in fact, and Department of State Enterprises need to go openly and vigorously after claiming damage from the type of McKinsey's, Trillion, Brian Molefe's, Iraj Abedian, etc., etc. We cannot allow the thieves to have billions of money out of the country, and then we keep talking about Eskom has got 500 billion, and what do we do about it? Well, we go and get the money back, and we put the company back on its feet.
Are you suggesting perhaps that there isn't sufficient commitment to solving the problems at Eskom when you mention that there are people that they specifically know and can trace their activities, and yet nothing is being done about it? And you also said that the judgment had certain aspects that it overlooked.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I'm not, by the way, the only person who's saying it. There's been consistent over the past 5 years, consistent campaign from media, from analysts, from legal fraternity that we need to deal with Eskom, and broader than that, all the public money is stolen from Transnet, from SAA, from Eskom, in a completely different way, because we know who has stolen. We know the organizations. We have their names and details, and we can calculate the damage that they have caused. But of course, Eskom is the most important one, is because it's such a vital part of literally providing energy for the entire economy and for the society. So we need to have if you ask me, the president has to put a specific crack team of the best lawyers, the best forensic auditors, and give them a specific times to go after the stolen money. And that can be recovered within 6 to 9 months. And a lot of this undue pressure that the society feels in the form of 500 billion and God knows maybe more of Eskom debt would be relieved. And we need to do it. It's a national duty.
Have you had a chance to interact with the report that was presented of the 9 key priorities, which include uninterrupted power supply, cutting costs, driving efficiencies, and increasing revenue? And how far is Eskom? Can they even be talking now, having a conversation about increasing revenues?
I think I've looked at those. These are all wonderful ideas, but collecting revenue when you don't have the capacity to collect is just an idea. Being efficient when you don't have the management team, nor do you have the resources, nor do you have a permanent CEO, it's just a good idea. We can't stick to good ideas. It's just far too technical, far too important for our society and for our economy to talk about ideas. We need to bring competent expertise. We need to give them a space, as well as capacitate Eskom to do all these things that are as you mentioned, the idea of competitiveness, the, revenue collection, etc., etc. The fact is, Eskom at the moment cannot do it, and the government has been dilly-dallying, and it needs to clarify its mind how to do the energy policy, and within that, what is the role of Eskom. We cannot talk and talk and talk 5 years later.
Mr. Abedian, what will happen to that deal that the outgoing Minister of Energy, Mr. Jeff Radebe, apparently signed in a rush just before there was a changeover with independent power producers, where there was no agreement in terms of whether it was a breakthrough for independent power producers or if it was just a power play? What will happen to that deal?
I wish I knew the reality. The point that you're raising is that we do not manage our energy policy in a coordinated way. We cannot have Minister of Energy and Minister of State Enterprises and Minister of Finance and the President have different views. They need to go to a room with experts and come up with a very considered and effective a policy that deals with the national energy policy, within which we have independent power producers playing a role, we have Eskom playing a role, we have a consistent policy not for this year and next year, for the next 50 years, of what is our position with respect to the environment, how much fuel do we want to produce, or how much energy we want to produce from coal, how much from alternate sources, etc., etc. And all of the government, all of the ministers need to read from the same page. We cannot have different ministers in a rush signing something, the other one in a rush making a statement, the president wanting to appease everybody, and the nation stays in a limbo. That is our problem. We need to deal with it.
In an age where globally conversation is about alternative power production, is it true that Eskom is too big to fail?
Not at all. Eskom is too big to survive because it's big in polluting the air, it's big in polluting the macroeconomic stability, it's causing disruption, it's causing corruption. We need to put Eskom where it belongs, which is to focus on a specific component of energy supply. Alternate energy is much cheaper, much more diversified. It creates a lot more jobs, by the way, and that's a very important opportunity that we should not lose. Literally tens of thousands of jobs could be created if we stop worrying about Eskom and focus on sources of energy that the technology enables us, which is environmentally a lot cleaner and from a social point of view a lot more conducive to job creation and growth creation. So we have no choice. I think Eskom has held the South African economy hostage for too long. And instead of saying it's too big to fail, we need to say it is too big, too corrupt, too inefficient to survive in its current form, and we need to rethink all over again.
So looking ahead to the State of the Nation address on Thursday, if you were to be put in an advisory role, what would you advise the President to tell the nation in terms of how he's going to move forward with regards to energy provision, but specifically to Eskom?
I would put a new energy policy in place within which Eskom has a role, a very small role, a much smaller and not a monopolistic role. I would open up the energy supply to alternate and clean energy and invite private sector to produce, at the same time retain the national transmission grid, a national asset. It cannot and should not be privatized. It should remain a national asset. And then I would free the municipalities to source energy wherever they can through alternate or other sources, and open up, modernize the energy sector to begin with. Within that, Eskom will have an important role to play and define its role and manage its financial crisis that it has, as we discussed before. If there's a 500 billion crisis, it's Eskom and Department of Enterprises and National Treasury who should go after those who have stolen the money, claim back damage from them. In fact, more than 500 billion. And that, as an economist, I can tell you, we can easily justify if we have the support of the cabinet to claim back and recover nearly all of that stolen money. So Eskom will be sustainable, and energy policy in the country will be sustainable too. And thousands, literally tens of thousands of jobs will be created in new sectors of energy generation.
Dr. Iraj Abedian, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.